There is a massive split in the Democrat Party as they try and figure out who they are today and what they're going to be moving forward. This is kind of a old school Democrat Party versus the new crazy radical wing. Welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel. It's important to me to make sure that the Democrat Party remains in the wilderness and lost. They have nothing. And even Carville says as much. But there was a huge fight between Carville and David Hogg, who's now number 2 at the DNC as kind of a party chair. They're arguing over tactics and what's the path forward. And of course, both sides are losers. So on one hand, you have the Joe Biden, James Carville, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the old, dusty, traditional Democrat Party. And then, Joe Biden ended up taking kind of his plan and his policies from the radical side of his own party. So he was a zombie. They emptied him out, but his actual belief system that he implemented over the last 4 years, no one recognized from old Joe Biden from Scranton, this old kind of oafish, big mouth, ineffective, never did anything in his life kind of Democrat. Suddenly he gets into office and he's this left-wing radical because he was getting all of his policy informed by truly radical leftists like Elizabeth Warren and a communist like Bernie Sanders. There was a lot more AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib in their anti-Israel sentiments, in their pro-trans sentiments. These are very radical. So that's what made them lose. So now the question is, what policy they're going to do? I have David Hogg, and we're going to get to the big controversy with he and James Carville. Let's watch. Oh, welcome to the Doug TenNapel channel.
And we lost voting shares with every single demographic except predominantly older voters and highly educated voters. That is a huge problem. And what we're trying to do here is not just focus on primaries where there's potentially an older incumbent, but more than anything, an ineffective person in that position, and replace them with a generational leader to build the future of our party.
But when you're talking about using the power of the DNC, whatever power it has,
he's admitting the DNC has no power today. Now, James Carville is at war with David Hogg because David Hogg wants a new, young, radical. It's very similar to the conversations that we've had on the conservative party going like, look, we've just been losing for so long. Can we just get a true conservative in there? And Trump ended up being a third way, by the way, that no one saw coming. That's why Trump was such a shock. But Carville is going, the DNC has no power. He does not want to do this radical stuff. I've been doing videos on him last couple of weeks, and he's been ranting over and over again about the radical wing of his own party is why Kamala Harris lost. He's blaming their policies are too left-wing radical.
Not very much, but you're using that we're paying Democratic donors are paying David Hogg's salary, they're paying David Hogg's staff, and he wants to run against other Democrats. Well, that's America. Run against who you want to.
He's saying that Dave Hogg has said he's going to primary other Democrats. So the old school type of Democrats, and you've heard the right do this too. Trump's going like, we're going to primary, that rhino or whatever, Mitch McConnell or whatever, and Thomas Massey. We're going to primary Thomas Massey. Well, that's what David Hogg has threatened about all of the Democrats that don't get on board with the new radical agenda. David Hogg said he's going to spend Democrat money to primary his own party members, fellow Democrats. So that's what James Carville's going, we're going to sue David Hogg if he pulls that.
Don't resign your position. Have guts, man. I don't think these people get it. I don't think they ever will get it. And I've said this before, and I'll say it now. I think we ought to think about just having a schism.
So that he wants to start a formal schism. That is a split, like the schism between the Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox. Or Greek Orthodox. James Carville's proposing a formal schism in the Democrat Party. Now, I, of course, am for this plan. Yes, James Carville, let's do that, because I believe in divide and conquer. You split that Democrat Party in half with a more traditional Democrat Party side, just old school corruption, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the new radical party, keep them divided, split them hard, and they'll never win another election again, because you can only win by uniting your party and dividing the other side.
That is what primaries are for. So there's a kind of a double-edged sword here. Is that really the role of the vice chairman of the DNC to encourage that, versus have people file, have people run for offices if they want to challenge people, etc. That can
that's Rahm Emanuel's brother, I think. That's not Rahm Emanuel. His name is Emanuel. He's saying that they should just do the normal primary, which they didn't do with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. And so he's kind of defending the traditional side of this whole thing.
Now, you have 24 hours in a day. I have 24 hours in a day. My time's usually figuring out how to win elections where Democrats can beat Republicans. You want to spend your time in your 24 hours figuring out how Democrats can beat Democrats? That's a choice you make in your schedule, in your
own time. That's what he's saying to David Hogg. There's resistance, and this Emanuel would represent the old school wing of the party, the Joe Biden side of it. And then they're threatened by David Hogg, and I'm championing David Hogg. We're going to get more on David Hogg on this big controversy. This is Western Lensman posted, Hogg versus Carville, feud heats up. David Hogg tears into James Carville for calling him a contemptible little twerp. James Carville has not won an election since before I was born. These are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. What a complete burn fiasco. I love anytime they're tearing into James Carville, because I think he's a mean cobra man snake. Let's watch.
He's being paid to run against other Democrats. I think it's an outrage. I don't know if I have standing, but I might give the DNC $10 and sue him. He's a contemptible little twerp, if you ask me.
The well-known Democratic strategist James Carville said in response to this announcement of this plan that you have to primary Democrats, he said that the DNC should sue you and called you, quote, a contemptible little twerp. What is your reaction to that?
Try it. That is my reaction. I would also say James Carville has not won an election since before I was born.
Oh, the battle is on. Sue me. Try it. I like David Hogg's confidence here. David Hogg versus James Carville, who's a different kind of hog. Hogg versus Hogg. That would be a great lawsuit. But he goes, James Carville hasn't won an election since before I was born. Is that true? Are the Democrats on a long-term losing path?
I think it's time to have new leaders in our party that are ready to meet this moment, because a lot of the people that are most critical of this plan are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. So I think the experts can save it, because it's time for some new ideas.
Yeah, it is time for some new ideas for them. Good. I just hope all I care about is that it split the party. We're going to get to Stephen A. Smith on this in a second. First, we're going to do some Jake Tapper. But this is Jake Tapper saying, our border policy, this poll down here, 61% of independents support deporting more migrants who are in the U.S. illegally. And this is a Democrat guy on the right defending their loser policy. And Jake Tapper keeps reminding him, this is a very unpopular policy that we're supporting here.
You just heard CNN's Harry Ensign that voters generally back Trump's immigration policies. Today in the Oval Office, President Trump said illegal immigration was, quote, the biggest reason he won re-election. He might be right about that. Do you think that your party is missing something on this issue?
Well, thanks for having me, Jake. I'd question that polling, because when you tell people the stories, you get very different answers.
Yes, do question the polling. Trump completely smeared the Democrats on that issue, and it probably did help get him elected. He's been running on it for a long time. I thought it was very bold of him to come out and speak. And this guy's going, question the polls. This is Rep. Sean Casten, Democrat from Illinois. And I would just like to encourage him to continue to question the polls and keep thinking that it's very popular to keep illegals here instead of deporting them.
Ask somebody whether they think an Afghani national who helped the U.S. troops find Osama bin Laden and now feels threatened at home and is here on an asylum case because they can't be sure they'll be safe at home, and is under temporary protected status, but not here legally yet. Should that person be deported? Should it?
Okay. He brings out, this is what I hate about the way Democrats argue, because this is so disingenuous. He says they haven't heard the stories. He goes, this Afghan refugee who helped our troops over in Afghanistan, we brought him back home to protect him from their terrorists from destroying him. And this guy's, he goes, you think Americans want to deport that guy? Of course not. But he's making it sound like, oh, is that all 11 million illegals that came over here? 11 million illegals were helping our soldiers, our troops in Afghanistan? No. They're coming to get our freebies. So you have to argue a general statement with a general. In general, who are these illegals? Are they war heroes helping us? No. They're here to take our services and not pay a dime into it. They're going to get full retirement, and they're not paying into it their whole lives. We pay into our retirement our whole lives. And then the retirement's going to dry up. We're going to run out of money, just like Gavin Newsom did in California. A $2 billion shortfall to pay for medical because illegals are using all the services. And then you and I, it's not there for you and I, and we paid into it.
A dreamer who has fought for our military, should that person be deported? Should a farm worker who travels back and forth with the seasonal crop, should that person be deported?
Yes, he should be deported. That guy, if he just wants to come over here and work, there's such a thing as a work visa. That's what green cards are for. We have permits. We have a rule of law. You don't get to just come over and say, I made up my own law. Because remember what I've said, guys, if our country is no longer a country of laws and the laws don't mean anything, and you can just make up your own and just go, you know what? I'm not going to pay my taxes. I'm not going to get a work visa. I'm just going to come over and pick fruit. And I'm going to say, fine, I'm going to make up my own law and not pay my taxes anymore. I'm going to cheat on my taxes. Everyone okay with that? I just made up my own law. They're going to magically go, no, you go to jail. You go to jail. You don't get to make up your own law. That's all I'm saying to the illegals and to this guy. You don't get to, just because you work and you pick your fruit, you don't get to just make up your own system, make up your own country.
Somebody who came here to study for college, fell in love, had a kid, and now has overstayed their visa. These personal stories.
Overstayed your visa. Is there such a thing as overstaying your visa? And is having a kid a way around that? They just invent their own rules, and suddenly he's talking about them as if it's a new law.
People have a much different answer.
Do you think we in the media aren't telling those stories?
These people all, but
I mean, the media. Look, the media tells plenty of stories like that, and we're not asking about individual A or individual B. We're talking about the deportation policy writ large, and there has been a change in public opinion on this in the last 8 years, away from your position and towards President Trump's position.
Wow, did you hear that from Jake Tapper? That is profound that CNN is saying that. Because remember, he's defeating this guy's argument. This guy's argument is you didn't tell enough of their sob stories. And that's why people for deporting these illegal immigrants. Jake Tapper he goes, no, we've been telling their stories. We've been telling all those stories that you talked about. And he goes, and it's still, America is going Trump's way. That's a huge admission from Jake Tapper. My hat's off to him. Now let's get to that Stephen Smith on Steve Bannon, because
you're driving me nuts with this.
And Stephen Smith, I love when he screams like a Southern preacher. You're driving me nuts with this.
You're driving me nuts with this.
He's going to lay into the Democrat Party so hard that I support this 100%. Stephen Smith.
Driving me nuts with this when you're bringing up the billionaires. Listen, I know that the left has been catering to elites, and it was clear they forgot about the working class. Don't get me started with woke culture, cancel culture, identity politics, and transgender, all of this stuff. Oh, don't get me started with that. I know that they're at fault for that. But I just saw Trump in the White House just the other day talking to billionaire friends about how much money they made in one day when he went on his Truth Social account and said this would be a good time to buy. So it ain't like this just the left talking to billionaires. He's doing it all the time. And by the way, isn't he one? Aren't those his contemporaries?
Now, hold on, Stephen. Shut your pie, little guy. This is hilarious to me. How much money do you have, Stephen A. Smith? He's going, Trump, He's talking to his millionaire friends to buy stocks. You know, when the stock market was down, Trump went out and put on all caps for the public, the poor, the rich, anybody. He goes, it's a great time to buy stocks. And he's right. Everyone knows it. You buy on a dip when it goes down, and then it goes up and you're fine. Stephen Smith is making the argument like, Trump, you're another billionaire talking to your billionaire sellout friends. Stephen A. Smith is one of the highest paid, got over at ESPN. He just renewed his contract for, I think it's another 4 years, because he's weighing if he wants to forego that contract and run for president. Tens of millions and millions of dollars. Nowhere near, what you or I make. So I just want to say to Stephen Smith, you're just because you have millions and not billions, doesn't excuse you. You're the rich, elite, disconnected. People like me, I have to work every day. I can't even take time off this year to go do ministry out in Dalton because it would cost me too much. I can't afford to pay my bills. If I want to do a vacation in San Diego this year, I can't afford to take 3 weeks off of work. That would just collapse the economy of this family. We have to pay rent. We have to pay insurance. We have to pay our bills. Stephen Smith, you ain't got no bills. You've got you have to pay for your caviar and Perrier, son, child, infant thinker. Keep talking like a black preacher, though. That's kind of funny.
Ferraris, why are we acting like it's the left talking to the billionaires and forgetting about folks, but it can't possibly be him now that he's in office?
Stephen A. Smith, number one, he's the first. When Biden came to office on a stolen election, you had Schumer, you had Pelosi. The Democrats ran the deal, okay? Ran the entire deal. They put up a proposal, a tax proposal that would actually tax the wealthy tax billionaires. Brother, it never even got out of committee. They're totally performative and they're totally phony. The reason is, the billionaires own the Democratic Party lock, stock, and barrel. Bernie Sanders runs around the country right now talking about the oligarchy. The oligarchy was created by the Democratic Party. All of those oligarchs, all of them were progressive Democrats until 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 5th of November, when MAGA and President Trump won, and then they had their road to Damascus, their Damascene moment, the reality. Oh, all of a sudden, I think we're MAGA. I think we're tech bros. We really like Trump. Trump has got the biggest of them all, Zuckerberg, in court, trying to break his empire up right now. Show me what every Democrat's done, including the phony Bernie Sanders, who wanders around yammering. Bernie Sanders had 2 shots at the Clinton mafia, the neoliberal neocon apparatus in charge of the Democratic Party. 2 shots. He never laid a glove on him. Trump came in out of nowhere and politically ripped her face off and beat her in a general election against all odds when he was down as much as 10 or 12 points. Bernie Sanders is a phony. Bernie Sanders is a weakling. Bernie Sanders doesn't talk about any fundamental change. And that's because nobody in the Democratic Party, until you and a couple other guys come along, men and women come along, challenge the billionaires that own it.
I'll definitely challenge them. I ain't got no problems with that. I mean, I'll be right here, just like you have your own platform. I have mine to challenge them, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to challenge your side either.
Don't give me this both sides stuff. Look in the mirror, Stephen, you big phony. I hope you run for president too. Because he has no political theory. No values guide him. Just another rich. Stephen A. Smith is just another rich white elite. And yes, I mean what I'm saying. I'm Doug TenNapel, and this is the Doug TenNapel channel. Hey, tell us what you think of Stephen Smith. Do you think he's running for president? And if he'd run, would you rather vote for him or pour Tabasco into your eyeballs? I'm Doug TenNapel. This is the Doug TenNapel channel.